So I'm Nicola, I'm part of Co-Production Collective team and really excited to welcome you all here today for this measuring what success looks like in co-production, learning by doing our program launch. And we have lots of the team who've been involved in this work so far here with us today. Really important to mention our partners in this program. So Evaluation Exchange at UCL, Compost London, Academy of Medical Sciences, and also the UCL Grand Challenges team. And then supporting on the call and also part of the team are Rob and Tony, Anne, Ruth, Gemma, Siobhan, Nick, Vanessa, Aleem, Christina, and George. So welcome to everybody. And if you haven't already, please do introduce yourself in the chat and perhaps let us know how you're feeling about the program. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you don't know, intrigued? We'd love to know. So please do make the best use of the chat that you can. Just a few small housekeeping things. Please do keep yourself muted throughout. This will provide the best experience for everybody on the call. Please don't worry at all if you drop out at any point. Come back in, we'll let you back in, and hopefully you won't miss much at all. We're trying to make this session as accessible as possible. So we do have slides, but we will be making sure to read through all of the content on the slides. We will be mainly using chat where you can ask questions. We will be collating all of these questions to put into our frequently asked questions webpage. So we'll do that after the event. If you're up for connecting with people on the call, please do put your email address and name in the chat. We will share the chat afterwards, so people will get all of those details. As you saw in the joining instructions, we are recording this session in the main room, at least. We won't be recording the breakouts, but in the main room, we will be recording. So please just be aware of that. We did let you know in advance, but wanted to give you a reminder. We are also planning to take a few photos. So please do let us know if you don't want to be in either of these things for the video. Please turn your camera off, and you won't therefore appear. And you're welcome to change your name on the screen if you would like to. And for photos, please let us know and we'll make sure that you're not included. Please do try to remain on mute throughout if you can. If you're not sure how to do this, just let us know in the chat and we will do that for you. So this is a large session. Where are we up to now? 198 people, which is great to see, and it's still rising, which is brilliant. But we are conscious of that, and so we will provide as much information as possible as we can during this session. And we wanted, though, also to try and retain some interactivity. So there will be a breakout where we hope, you will get a chance to chat to others, and you'll hopefully find that useful. We don't want to spend too much time talking at you, but we're conscious, obviously, we want to share the information as well. The breakouts, as I said, are a chance to connect with others, share ideas, and generally think a bit more about what you might want to get out of this program. It's absolutely essential for us to get feedback from you and find out what worked and what didn't. So please do let us know. There is a link we'll be sharing to a feedback form. You can also add questions that are unanswered in there for you as well. So we'll gather questions from the chat, from the survey, and we will also be using a Jamboard as well. So lots of ways for you to let us know what your questions are. Right, I think I've hopefully covered most things, although let me just double check. I think so. Vanessa, have I covered everything or have I missed something? Is Vanessa there? I believe Vanessa, you're up next.
Yeah.
Did I forget anything, or is it all right to hand on to you?
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, so as Nick says, we're very excited to launch our program, and just to say that kind of the fantastic team that have been co-producing this with us are also kind of, some of them are present on the call and a couple couldn't make it, but there's a huge amount of effort gone into preparing this. And I'm just going to provide in this first overview really a background to the program, and then also kind of an overview of the process and benefits, and then details, a little bit more detail of the application pack and the application details. And I know we've sent out only in the last few days a lot of information, and so we're not going to go through all of that information, but hopefully just kind of direct a little bit more as to what are the best things to look at and what are the things that we're really going to be looking for and how we can support you throughout this kind of process. So really, what I want to do first, turning to the background of the programme, is this journey began in 2018 and evolved really through 2 phases of co-production collective funding and a total of 9 pilots. And the aim of these initially was to learn more about co-production in practice. So in these previous rounds of pilots, we funded 5 pilot projects for up to £5,000 over 4 months. And then I think following that first pilot, it was really noticeable that in terms of time and resource that needed to be increased. And so in 2019 to 2020, we funded a further 4 pilots over 7 months for up to £15,000. And that was really quite astounding and quite impressive. The kind of projects that we ran were quite different. And so I think one thing that came out of that was really trying to understand better how these practices were really emerging across those different pilots. And in January 2022 to December 2022, we decided to explore how to make the case as to the value of co-production for individuals, organisations and society. And this was the value of co-production research project. And across this project, it really was co-produced and heard from over 700 people and studies over the year. So quite a large project. And what we found in this study was really a very, this is just a very top line visual of the findings from the project. And most importantly, one of the outcomes, or one of the kind of key outcomes of this project was really that delivering outcomes that actually matter to people was really essential. And outcomes of the work would be impactful, relevant and applicable for members of the community and people with lived experience, because they've been genuinely involved and heard throughout. And also that those were culturally inclusive and adapted. Results are likely to show more sensitivity to the cultural context. And just kind of one of the key findings, or most notable findings from the research highlighted, and Ruth will come on to talk a little bit more about this later, but really the kind of impetus for this programme of funding was really that the impact of co-production was often underexplored, and that co-production initiatives were rarely formally evaluated. And some of the colleagues who worked on these programmes, Lynn, will also kind of talk a little bit later in the programme to give some more insight into that. So this programme and funding opportunity is really around Research England participatory funding, and we're hoping to allocate 5 to 7 projects to each receive £10,000 to £15,000 over the next, or over 7 to 8 months from January next year. You'll have seen this or a few versions of it many times across some of the documents and some of the social media that we've used to advertise this programme. And I think one thing that as a team we really want to stress here, that as a kind of co-production team as well, it's been more of a journey or a process. And what we wanted to do was make sure that within that process and that journey, we allowed those relationships to foster not only in our team, but among people outside of the project team as well. And that the programme itself, as well as those who are successful in achieving funding, actually could reap some benefits from being involved and just coming along on this kind of process. So the team will talk more later, and Ruth in particular will talk about what happens after decisions are made later in the session. But for now, I'm just going to focus a little bit more on what we felt that would be the sort of good ingredients for an application, and how we're going to look at those in a little bit more detail. So what we've sent out so far and what to look at, there are sort of several documents that we communicated on Friday and again on Monday, and I really would recommend to look at those. We've tried to make them fit together, if you like. So we've got a general funding information which provides a lot of the background information, specifically detail on the scope of the programme, how it aligns with our priorities and values, eligibility, specific criteria, and also expectations of being involved in the wider programme for those who are successfully funded. There'll also be an application form. So and within this, it provides you with a template with questions for you to respond to, a budget template to complete, and then also possibly one of the most important parts of the document is actually the appendix guidance table. And within that, I'll talk through and I'll direct you to, but within that, it really tells you a little bit more about what we're looking for. Another thing is, as with all of these funding programs, there's always lots of questions. We've done our best to preempt some of the questions that we had as a team going through and how we answered those. And we've put them together and compiled a frequently asked questions document, which is available as a web page. What we hope to do throughout this session is add to that. We know we won't have answered and captured all questions. So any questions around clarifying around the core, we will put around the programme, we'll put into that and evolve. There's also 2 blogs that you can look at, and that also provides a lot of background detail around the core. So importantly, the general information document provides information on the overall scope of the programme, and to be able to kind of fulfill or to submit a good application, we really need you to demonstrate that you'll fulfill all 4 of these areas. So it needs to include mental health and well-being and/or climate change as the main theme to your project. You also need to have a collaborative approach, so that's between at least 2 partners within the programme. Within the programme, and in terms of that, we haven't put a maximum or limit on it or kind of any sort of specific criteria or specification, but you will need to demonstrate that you have the right skills or the complementary skills, knowledge and experience that's relevant to your project. And then, because this project's around evaluation, learning and sharing, we want you to show a commitment to that. So that is a core criteria, and we'll be looking for that throughout the budget, but in a specific area of the budget as well, of the program as well. We'll also be looking at how accessible and equitable the practices are that you state within your application. So as I said, in terms of eligibility, who can be involved? So anyone can be involved, but again, it's just critical to show why this is the best mix of people and skills and knowledge and experience for your projects to fulfill your specific aims. So that's something that's really, really important. You must have a recognised host organisation to make the funding payment to. The payments can't be made to an individual. And again, details of this are in both the general information document and the FAQs. And that host organisation does need to be within the UK for us to be able to transfer that payment. Your proposal must also be a new project. That could be expanding on a previous one, but you need to show that there are no restrictions on data sharing or knowledge. And again, there's more information on that in the FAQs. So I want to just very briefly just highlight the core areas that we're looking for within the application criteria. And the first area, these 5 areas are actually across the documents, and we've tried to make it as transparent and easy for you to see what we're looking for across these. So I'll go through step by step, but importantly, as I mentioned, the appendix table in the application form document is probably the most helpful thing to look at. And although you'll find some questions and answers under the FAQ document as well in here, please do let us know if we haven't captured any of them throughout the session. So I'll just go through these one by one. And first of all, what we're asking, as you might expect, is a clear plan describing how you'll carry out the project and meet the overall scope and aims for the programme. So the scope that I just mentioned, how will you fulfil those 4 criteria, needs to be woven throughout your aims and objectives. And you need to be clear on who are the beneficiaries, how they've been included and involved, or how they will be within your project, and also kind of designing your project so far. And this is really important, and this whole programme around evaluation is around kind of how we know we've made a difference and what's changed. So what we want you to do is identify who you want to make a difference to and how they've been involved in these aims. And the second criteria around the principles of co-production, and I just want to kind of touch on what we mean at the collective around these, and that's really, these are the core principles of co-production that we apply in all of the work that we do, and that's building and maintaining relationships, which is really at the heart of everything we do, and also our values. Accessibility, inclusion and transparency, shared decision making, understanding and addressing unequal power dynamics, and respecting and enabling all knowledge, skills and experience. And then importantly, when we come to impact, is the value and the benefit for all. So what's in it for everybody and how is it going to make a difference? And that's what we really want to kind of dig deeper into. Later in this session, my colleague Rob will also talk a little bit more about how these principles relate to the values. And we'll be looking at how these really, there's a specific question looking at how these have been embedded in your thinking around your project design. And as I mentioned before, Ruth will talk a little bit more about this and what we mean by evaluation and sharing knowledge and learning, but really making sure that you've considered not only early on when we talk about who the beneficiaries might be and what difference it's going to make to who, but also kind of how you're going to measure that. And just having, though you might not have all the answers at this point in time, and you might need to collaborate to find them, what's your current thinking and how are you showing that you're committed to this as part of the programme? And that will also be through the budget elements as well as through the more project related aspects. And then this again, a plan to make a difference. So this is where I really want to check that you're thinking about those aims, beneficiaries in your plan and how committed you are to evaluate. So what do you hope this difference will be? And we'll ask you a few more questions around that within this section of the application form. And then finally, and importantly, the project costs and resource allocation. So we'll be looking at whether those costs that you've included are realistic, and whether exactly how you've allocated those resources. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Nicholas, and he's just going to talk a little bit more because I think there's a lot to digest in there about the questions and answers session that we'd like to run, but the tools that we're going to use to do that.
Just while we get Nick on screen, it's Nicola or Nick here. Can I just say apologies, I forgot to turn on our live transcription tool, which is called Otter. So I'm going to do that now, and you will get a message saying you're being live streamed. I promise you you're not. It's just for the transcription tool. So if you want to follow the conversation via Otter, we'll put a link in the chat and you can follow that. It's means you can check back on what's being said, and it also means you don't need to look at the screen all the time if you don't want to. So I will make that live now. Please accept or say yes to the question. Don't decline it, because it will kick you out of the meeting if you do. Apologies, Nick. Back over to you. Have we got Nick? Is he there?
Hello. Yeah. I am here. I'm here. I've turned my camera on. Can you see me? Or
I think it's just coming. I'm going to make sure that you are spotlighted.
What a big reveal that everyone must be waiting for.
There you go.
Nick, can I just check? So we're 5 minutes ahead. Does that mean we've got 10 minutes to do this question bit, or shall I still stick to the 5 minutes that we talked about?
I think try to stick roughly to 5 minutes, because then we can have a bit more time in the breakouts, can't we? But see how you go.
Brilliant. All right. Well, hi everyone. It's great to be here with you all. I'm Nick Hillier. I'm from the Academy of Medical Sciences, and I've had the privilege to be involved in this project for a while. It's been fantastic. We're conscious that there's lots of people online, and also you've just heard lots of information. We would love to be able to sort of run a Q&A session where people just kind of get to stick their hand up and ask questions, but with this many people online, we can't quite do that. So there's a few ways that now in this 5 minutes that people can ask questions. I guess one thing to start to kick off while I'm speaking is, if you have got a question, like a clarifying question now, something quite specific, like how many people need to be in the group, or where do I need to be based to be part of this project? If you pop it into the meeting chat now, there are members of the project team who will attempt to answer those questions as best they can. If they can't answer them, what we're going to be doing is collecting them, writing them down, making sure that we will answer them. But it's just an answer for you to sort of get some immediate feedback on the initial stuff that you've heard. So please kick in with that now. The other thing that you can do is there's a Jamboard, which again, the link is going to go into the chat for you to click on. And you can fill that in, particularly in the breakout sessions, if there's anything you want to pop on that. The Jamboard is structured so there's some sort of specific questions, or you can group your questions on that Jamboard. But again, don't be constrained by what's already on there. If you've got a question, get it down somewhere so that we can answer it for you. You're also going to get a meeting evaluation form afterwards, which is again, so we can get some feedback on you about this session, but also there's another opportunity in there for you to ask questions. So please don't hold back on your questions. This is really about us working up the information, making sure we're getting the right information that you need in order to get involved in the project. So I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. There's lots of stuff, brilliant stuff in the chat already, with people connecting, sharing their contact details, which is fantastic. But again, if you've got any specific questions, pop them in the chat and people will attempt to answer them. Just to give a few shout outs to the names. So Anne and Ruth, you're going to hear more of them on some of the evaluation and learning approaches. But if you've got a question for them already now, bung it in the chat. They'll attempt to answer it. And the same thing, Rob, Tony and Prisha are here, who've been part of the team along with others to kind of put this information, the application information together, ideas on how projects will get assessed, thinking about the slide that Ness put on earlier on with the sort of A, B, C, D, E, etc. Those sections, if you've got something, a particular question in one of those bits that you want some clarification on, that's great. Pop it in the chat here. You might have some quite specific questions to you, to your project idea, etc. That's what the breakout sessions are going to be probably hopefully more useful for later on, an opportunity to kind of bounce a few ideas about, think about what you need, what you want, but also what you can get out of the people who are here on the call, a chance to kind of hopefully connect with old friends and new friends. I think that is all I will need to say. Got a couple more minutes again, just to keep using this time because I think it's actually quite handy for people to see what questions others are asking. So yeah, keep those questions coming in the chat. We will attempt to answer them, if not live, immediately. We'll get back to you. I promise those names I said are not AI bots. They are real people who are here probably frantically typing and scrolling to answer questions. how is that? I'll keep talking while you've got some more time to keep adding questions in, but purely to fill the space for you. But yeah, please, no question is too much for us to answer. And actually what you might see from looking at the questions that people are asking, if there are people who've got similar questions to you, give them a nudge. Might be an opportunity to connect to find answers to the questions that you've both got. Okay. In the interests of keeping us to our claimed back 5 minutes, so we've got more time in the breakout groups, I'll stop there. Is that okay, Nick? Or would you like me to freestyle a bit more and encourage people to ask your questions in the chat?
No, I think that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Nick, or Nicholas. Sorry, I should say. I think we are going to Vanessa now, I believe.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, and thank you, Nicholas. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more. And one thing we wanted to do was give a flavour of some of the co-production values and principles, and how we felt this programme came about, and just to allow you to hear as well from some of our fantastic team that we've been co-producing this programme with, and who've been involved in the value of co-production, but also some members who are brand new to the team, and this is the first project that they've worked with the collective on. So I think there's a really, really great mix in here. But just to start off with, something we felt was really important is that co-production is defined quite differently by different people, different groups, and in different contexts. So we just wanted to, I guess, share what co-production means to us, and that really we think of it as an approach to working together and really aspiring to equal partnership and equal benefit, and that's how we kind of conduct all of our projects and work. And the way in which we work is really through listening and respecting all of the people we work with, and being inclusive about to value kind of learning from different people and staying open to new ways of doing things. We respect people's confidentiality. We do work with many people with lived experience who share much of their experience in confidence, and so we do acknowledge that can make people feel more vulnerable, and that we agree not to share those without anyone's permission. The way we work is also kind of really thinking about how we advance things and without kind of adding to any conflict or tension, and how we can disagree with the point rather than the person, and really make that a collaborative process. Again, inclusivity and accessibility is really important. So we're really seeking to ensure that everyone is able to contribute, and hopefully make the environment enabled so that people can contribute. And one part of that is also using plain language and avoiding jargon. We all fall into the trap of using acronyms in our own little world. They're the way we live, and sometimes it's just we forget to explain them. So we do try and make more of a concerted approach to really helping people understand and sharing that. In the collective, our core values are really important, and Rob's going to talk a little bit more about how they relate to the principles that I described earlier, the principles of co-production, how we apply the principles within these values. But overall, we want to really bring through the human side of interaction into our co-production practices, and we value people as people. So we do everything wholeheartedly, and we really want to make that genuine difference and understand what that difference is. As part of that, we want to be inclusive, so including all humans and everyone as participants fully in all of our kind of co-production activities, and involving our community and other communities. We want to be transparent, and that involves transparent about the way we share power and make decisions, and openly and collectively, and how we're accountable to each other and to our co-production community. And then challenging can be quite difficult. And I think healthy challenge is really good, and healthy challenge that enables us to question and both the status quo and ourselves as well within that, and how we move things forward. So these are some of the things, and you'll hear a lot about these in the next two presentations. So I'm going to hand over now to a video of Lynn, one of our co-producers, who was involved in the Value of Co-Production research project and many other projects within the collective, and has been also kind of involved in putting together this programme. So I'll hand over to a video, Patrick, if you could play that video for me.
My name is Lynn Laidlaw, and I'm a member of the Co-Production Collective and part of the group co-producing this project. I'm really sorry that I can't be here with you all at the event. So I've done this video to try and give you all a little background about the Impact and Evaluation project, but specifically how it relates to the Value of Co-Production research project, which we did last year. So I was involved in the Value of Co-Production project, and in that we used a number of research methods, including community reporting and a survey, to try and answer the question, what is the value of co-production? And as part of the project, we also did a rapid critical review of research papers published about co-production, which mentioned values and principles, to see what the evidence was. And I was part of the team which co-produced that alongside Anne, another co-production collective member, and a number of academic researchers, Alison, Dylan, Carol and Bridget, who were all experienced reviewers. And for me, reviewing the papers was frustrating, and I developed what Alison told me was reviewer rage, mainly because there was often no evidence to back up the claims made in the papers about the various aspects of co-production, including evaluating the impact. And often, when the papers mentioned the impact, it was for the people that they had co-produced with, not the researchers too. And as a team, we felt that this was inequitable. So we produced a number of recommendations, but I will only mention the ones that are relevant to this project. So we found that co-production is a complex methodology that needs to be resourced, planned, evaluated and reported, just like any other research methodology. But co-production can also be seen as a complex intervention in its own right, with intended and unintended impacts which go beyond that of the focus of the research project. And the values underpinning co-production are fundamental to it, but they can also be seen as the mechanisms through which change can be achieved. And we felt that we need to recognise that the outcome of co-production may not always be predictable, and that co-production projects may not always progress along a straight line. As we often say, it can get a bit complex and messy. So there needs to be a shift in current thinking regarding research. So moving away from this product output focus to also emphasise the impacts of the process of producing something, such as building relationships. In co-production, both the journey, that's the way that we work together, and the destination, the outcome of the project, are important. And this can prove challenging, as co-production receives little funding and little acknowledgement. And these complex processes can be challenging to measure and evaluate. We really felt that project teams need to create a safe space where each person contribute on their own terms, yet also support the personal development and growth of individual relationships and the team. Co-production can challenge people's identities. I know that it certainly did. It certainly challenged mine. And it may be helpful to prepare the team members for this by discussing it at the start of the co-production journey, and by allowing honest discussions throughout about people's perceived or actual abilities to contribute. And our final recommendation, which I like to think led to this project, was evaluation methods need to be co-produced too. And we felt that this will almost inevitably require creative and flexible ways to consider impact, which can sometimes be hard to articulate or anticipate. Evaluation plans should ideally look at project impacts and contributor impacts to assess the total impact of the project. And we also need to do work on practical ways to measure the enactment of the values and principles that are so important to co-production and the way that we all work together. So I hope that this has been helpful and provides some context to the topic of evaluating the impact of co-production projects. And if you haven't read the value of co-production research findings, I would encourage you to do so, as I feel it would really help your application. Thank you.
Brilliant, and thank you to Lynn for providing that video. And we're now going to hear a little bit more about how the core values link to some of the principles of co-production, and just give you a flavour of some of that lived experience and how it fits within our kind of values and how we approach co-production. So Patrick, if you could play the video from Rob now, please.
So respecting and enabling all knowledge, skills and experience, and as Lynn has touched upon in her video, working by our core values at the collective, and more importantly, across this programme, essential to everything we do. I'll touch upon some personal reflections on some of the principles of co-production at the collective that underpin our way of working, and give you some examples and ideas of how you might incorporate these principles into your projects and application process. So firstly, being human, valuing diversity of knowledge, experience and perspective, building mutually beneficial relationships based on honesty and trust. So this is about understanding we are all human and have different beliefs and attitudes about how things should be done. And for me, it's about being non-judgmental and listening to others' experiences, their challenges and being involved in co-produced work, and their experiential informed tensions they may have. Understanding their worldview and stepping into their shoes can be a way of understanding co-producers and all involved in the project. Remember, professionals are human too. Building trust, whether an individual or a group, is a process that takes time. However, you can strengthen relationships by being honest and transparent about your work and discussing what works and what you find challenging. This approach can help establish trust within the projects you're working on together. Secondly, being inclusive, removing barriers to participation and recognizing people's strengths and supporting their development. So similar to being human, we all have our strengths and lesser capabilities, and again, trying to understand these different human characteristics can help us create expressive inputs that on a personal level can empower us to achieve meaningful involvement. To clarify on the team's earlier points, to ensure successful co-produced projects that are equitable, transformative and impactful, it's essential to plan ahead and have the necessary resources available. While having an academic researcher is not a requirement, having someone with the skills to produce tangible outputs is necessary. It's also essential to remove any barriers individuals with relevant experiential knowledge may face to address their needs, concerns and preferences, acknowledging that community projects may function differently depending on the context. So thirdly, being transparent, addressing power imbalances and hierarchies, sharing roles and responsibilities. While it may be tempting to rely on your own experience and knowledge when sharing power, it's important to remember that there are many perspectives to consider. Making decisions that benefit everyone involved often requires exploring new approaches and ideas. Co-production consists of setting aside these prefixed assumptions, treating everyone as equals, and embracing different ways of working to gain insights and produce knowledge in your project in diverse ways. As Lynn pointed out earlier, it's essential to establish clear expectations from the beginning and be transparent about the resources available to assist with sharing roles and responsibilities. This could include setting aside funds to support individual learning or ensuring that the project is staffed with the appropriate number of people to distribute duties based on each person's abilities. As the Evaluation Exchange and Compost London touched upon earlier, the collective is also at hand to provide support and coaching to the chosen projects and aid you in achieving these principles. Lastly, being challenging, continuous reflection, learning and improvement, embracing new ideas and ways of working. One of the key aspects of this project is for us to capture and evaluate co-produced practices. In your project, this reflexive process is a way of learning what works for the team members and what may be the challenges that are worth seeking to improve. This can support and make the journey more meaningful for all involved. And for some, this might be easy, but from past experiences, I've found it hard to challenge what may sometimes be the status quo. However, collectively embracing and reflecting on these challenges can bring about an understanding to improve the right conditions to fit your projects. Remember that you may be laying down the foundations for future co-produced work in your area. So highlighting these intricacies may challenge the status quo in the future and potentially bring about lasting change. These practices require courage, vulnerability, but the rewards are worth it. So don't shy away from challenging conversations and remember to take time to reflect on your experiences. You might be surprised by the positive impact that your discoveries can have on your projects and beyond. We hope that these pillars of co-production that the collective strives for can be embedded in your projects that go some way to shape suitable conditions for all involved. Remember that, like most things in life, nothing is linear, and the back and forth of ideas is part of the co-production journey. As Lynn described earlier, in past projects is complex and messy. We look forward to hearing your questions and ideas and learning more about your projects, which we will hope create long-term benefits for all by learning by doing. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob, for creating that video. I'm now going to hand over to Ruth, who's going to provide some more understanding for us on evaluation, learning and sharing.
Great, thanks, Ness. Are we able to pull up the slides?
Next
slide.
Brilliant.
Great, and the next slide. Thank you. I'm Ruth, and I'll be talking through the element of the programme that aims to strengthen evaluation in co-production. And although you'll be hearing my voice, there are lots of people online who've been working on this part of the programme. So if you're putting questions in the chat, they'll be answering them if they can. I've just been trying to answer the other ones and it was a steady flow, so I know it's not easy. And also we've got the breakout session later that aims to capture people's questions again, so that we'll be able to share answers after the session and in future events. And in particular, online today, we've got Anne and I think Caroline and also Rob and the wider co-production collective. And this has really been a group effort, even though you're hearing my voice today. Next slide, please. So what we thought it would be helpful to cover today is to give you a bit of background as to what the Evaluation Exchange is and who we are and what we mean by evaluation, and how we're working with the co-production collective and how we will work with the 5 to 7 projects in the programme, and then also talk a little bit about the expected commitments of anyone interested in joining the programme and what it might involve. Next slide. So the Evaluation Exchange, who are we? Well, our aim is to help those in the not-for-profit sector to build effective evaluation approaches into their work. And really, we're responding to a demand from people who want to capture feedback from people accessing their services so that they can better respond to their needs, or people who are keen to demonstrate the impact of their work. And to date, we've been a collaboration between Compost London, which is a community infrastructure organisation, and UCL, and we're both interested in bringing together different knowledge and experience and ways to gather kind of useful information and evidence and support people through that process in a way that supports them. So I should emphasize that we don't do evaluations, but we help people to evaluate their own work. So it's around building capabilities for people to evaluate their work in the longer term. So the next slide, please. What do we mean by evaluation? Well, evaluation can mean many different things to different people, and to some of you it may mean nothing at all, and that's okay. But as a human, you will have skills and a mindset to be doing it, because essentially it's about reflecting on things, assessing or making a judgment about something. So reflecting on whether something works well or not so well. And the reason why you're doing that is because you're learning to help improve something. And the reason why you're doing that is to change things for the better, either adjusting things that aren't working well or to keep doing things that are working well. And the key messages that we would give at this stage is that there are different approaches to learning and reflecting, and different things to learn and reflect on. And that depends on the circumstances, your needs, particular interests, and also particular capacity in a particular context. And we're really conscious that different people will have different levels of confidence or even fear around this, but everyone's knowledge and experience is of value when we're talking about learning and reflecting and evaluating. Next slide, please. So we're about really helping embedding useful and practical approaches to reflecting and learning that work for the people who are using them. And so rather than promoting a specific approach, we bring together people with different knowledge and experience to co-produce a solution that works for you. So in the case of this programme, it will be the project teams that you'll be in, developing your own evaluation approaches that are relevant to your own project. Next slide. So how are we working with the co-production collective? Next slide. Through the Measuring Success in Co-Production programme, we'll be working with the co-production collective to support 5 to 7 co-produced projects to embed evaluation in their work in a way that's appropriate to their needs and the project context. So I should emphasise that we won't be evaluating projects, but supporting you to do what you want to do to reflect and learn in a way that is appropriate for you and your project. And secondly, it's all important to remember, why are we doing this? So as Lynn highlighted, there's a real need to strengthen evaluation in co-production. So we were keen to address those weaknesses that she highlighted from those activities that were found last year. So we really want to capture learning from your experience of using different evaluation approaches in your co-produced work, so that at the end of the programme, we're able to develop some guidance to support future co-produced projects to evaluate their work. So on that first point, what will the support look like? So next slide. So we're proposing an approach that helps build your skills and your knowledge of evaluation for all those individuals involved in the 5 to 7 projects. And it's really a programme that's focused on learning by doing. So we'll be providing some training, or what we're calling deepening practice sessions, over the 6 months of you working together. And what we think at this stage that it will cover is, at the beginning, looking at planning evaluations, and then looking at methods for evaluating. And then after some time of you trying out particular methods, then coming together to adapt those methods in response to the learning that you're having. And then at the end, sharing evaluation findings. And over the course of that 6 months of you working in your projects, we hope that you'll be able to access some ad hoc coaching and guidance from us. And also we'll be running some sharing and learning sessions to help capture your experience. So the next slide is aiming to describe what this all might look like in practice. So the following slide shows a timeline for next year, with January 2024 at the bottom, at the beginning, and December 2024 at the end. And it shows what will happen over the course of next year. So at the top, it shows that from January to August, you'll be working in your project team on your co-produced activity, and that will be the concentration of most of your focus and your attention in terms of the project. But running underneath that, I've emphasised the support that we will give. So in January, we'll have session 1, which will be, we think, around helping you think through and plan potential evaluation activities. In session 2 in February, we'll be helping you explore different evaluation methods that you might want to use. And over the course of the time of your project until August, you'll be trying them out. But in April, we'll have a 3rd session where we'll come together to see how you're getting on. What have you learned? What are the challenges and approaches that you're using? And how might you want to adapt your approaches? And then in June, we'll come together for looking at how you might want to share your evaluation findings. And then in August, you'll be finishing your work together in your project. And in October, there'll be a big celebration of all your work. And that celebration, we hope, will be in person. So also, what I mentioned before is that we want to be learning from your experience, because we want to help other co-produced projects to evaluate their work. So there are some orange circles on this diagram, one representing a midpoint learning session in April, which will capture your experience so far, and a final learning session in September. And in those sessions, we'll be interested in your experience of using evaluation approaches, as well as the support that we've given. And we'll be wanting to capture that to feed into the guidance that we hope to produce around supporting evaluation. So that's along the bottom of this particular diagram, with the launch of that guidance being at the end of next year, once your projects have been completed. So in that time between January and August, as well as all those sessions, we'll be able to provide some project-specific ad hoc coaching and guidance, we hope, both from us in the Evaluation Exchange, as well as the wider co-production collective. But I should emphasise that through this time, you'll mainly be working in your project teams from January to August, but you'll be coming together for the deepening practice sessions as a cohort of those 5 to 7 project teams. At this stage, we think that that January session will be a full day in person, we hope, to really give us a chance to meet each other and get to know each other. And then the rest of those sessions in February, April, June, and also September are likely to be half days online, although perhaps the sharing and learning sessions might be a bit shorter. Yeah, by bringing everyone together in person and online, we hope you will be able to explore and learn and support each other whilst you're putting things into practice in your own projects. So in my explanation, what I've done is emphasize the support around evaluation rather than necessarily the wider co-production support that may sit alongside that. So if you have questions about that, we can also ask Ness and Nick. But also, perhaps I should ask if my team want to add anything. Have I missed anything?
I think you've covered it all really well, Ruth. Thank you.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay, great. And Ness and Nick, is there anything that you want to say about the wider support for co-production?
No, I think you've captured most of it, Ruth, so I think that's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, which is my final slide, and this is about expected commitment. So what do we expect you to commit to? Well, we expect representatives from the project team to be able to join those deepening practice and sharing learning sessions. And in your commitment to the programme, we expect you to be involved in the co-production of learning and reflection in your projects. And we don't anticipate in your team that it will be the responsibility of one person alone. We expect you all to play a part and to be able to recognise and value that everyone has a contribution to make in this aspect of the project. So like I said earlier, some people might feel confident, but some people might feel less confident, but we strongly believe that everyone has a really valuable contribution to make in terms of this piece of work. And also finally, a commitment to sharing your learning from the experience so that we can inform that future guidance that's supporting future evaluations in co-production. And that's the end of my slides. So I'll hand back to Ness.
And actually to Nick.
Yeah, I think it's to me. Thank you. I think there's a slide with comfort break, but I also need to be spotlighted as well. I can't find myself. Oh, here we go. There I am. So time for a break. We've been talking enough and we really want you to have a chance to move around, get a cuppa or a drink of some sort. Please do come back after the break because we have a really important part of the programme. Whilst we're just disappearing off for a break, we will put some things in the chat again, which is the link to the feedback questionnaire and also the Jamboard link. Please do add any questions that you have to either of those or feedback about how the event's gone for you so far. But what I also wanted to say is after the break, we will be moving into a breakout where you get a chance to meet people and talk or interact in whatever way works for you. So please do come back after the break, not least because I've been making the breakouts and I'll be really sad if people disappear. So we'll see you back in 10 minutes if that's all right. Please have a nice break and thank you for sticking with us so far. I'm just going to do a little bit of a kind of roundup of the session and mention a few key things for those that are with us. Whilst I do that, please, if you'd like to, feel free to put a word in the chat to describe how you're feeling now. So hopefully it's excited or something along those lines. But like I said at the start, we're always really, really keen to learn and improve on everything we do. So please share feedback as well. You know, if it is bored, please let us know because, you know, we can work on that for the future. We will also put the link to the feedback form in the chat if you haven't got it yet, and if you haven't yet completed, please do and share with us your feedback as to how you found today and what you think we could improve on. You know, we've been blown away by the support and enthusiasm for this event and for people interested in coming along and learning more. And you know, that's meant that we had to do it in a bit more of a kind of presentation form, which is not our normal style. You know, we really love to do things in a really discursive way and have everybody involved. And you know, we hope you still got a lot out of it, even though it wasn't perhaps as discursive as sometimes if you've been involved in our things before. As we mentioned multiple times during today, we are capturing all of your questions, and we will be updating our frequently asked questions webpage. So please, continue to add questions that you have to the chat, or send them to us afterwards. We will do within the next week, we will send a follow-up email out to everybody. And with that, we'll include the video from today. So please, feel free to share that with others. We'll make sure, also there was quite a lot of people who couldn't come along today in the end, so we'll be sharing the video with them as well. So, accessibility is really important to us, and that's something that we're going to try and do as part of this funding program as well, is provide a small pot of funding for people to tap into to support accessibility. And we will share a very brief application form to go with this, that you can, with some information on how you can apply for that small additional fund to support accessibility. We also are really conscious that, an application form like we've developed doesn't work for everybody, and some people might find it difficult to understand. So please do let us know if there's any support at all that we can provide to help you in completing the application form, or in taking part in any of the sessions that we're going to run. There is another key date for the diary, which is the 17th of October. From 10 AM to 2 PM, we will be running a session. There will be more information shared soon, but this will be on a platform called Remo, which is designed to be ultra kind of interactive and fun to use. Hopefully you will find it fun if you join us. But that is, as I said, coming up on the 17th of October. We will be sharing an Eventbrite link, so you can sign up to that soon. And as with everything else, please let us know if you want help in getting into Remo and more information on it. We'll do our best to support you so that it's a seamless transition from Zoom to Remo. It has all sorts of kind of ability to appear like you're in a physical room together. So hopefully, people will find it enjoyable and engaging. So we will put some key contact information in the chat for you as well. There is the Co-Production Collective email address, which is coproduction@ucl.ac.uk. Or there's also Vanessa's email address as well. If you have any questions at all, or want to share any more questions or feedback, please use those email addresses. And then other thing I want to say, I'm just going to check if there's anything in the chat, people asking questions or anything. No, looks like we're okay. The final thing then to say is thank you. Thank you for coming. And I think there's the next slide. Yeah, there we go, with a few bits and pieces. The email address for coproduction@ucl.ac.uk is on there. Our Twitter, which is @UCL_CoPro, or I should say X, Twitter or X, not quite sure what we call it these days. You can also find us on LinkedIn, co-production collective, and it should pop up for you to follow. Please do follow us there. And we have regular what we call CoPro cuppers once a month on the events page on our website. You can sign up for those. They're really informal, a cuppa and a chat with other people interested in co-production. So feel free to come along, or you can sign up for our newsletter as well. So that is a monthly update as to all the things we have going on. But yeah, like I said, massive thank you to you all for coming, and to all of the team who've got involved in making today seamless, and well, nearly seamless. We had the standard IT problems, right? But that always happens. But yeah, loads of people behind the scenes, lots of people you saw on screen, lots you didn't. But thank you so much, and I hope to chat to you all soon. And please do continue to be involved in hearing more about this program and hopefully applying. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.